Yo, what's up guys? I'm Nuo, and today we're going to be making a tier list of all the Warmind Cell mods currently in the game. I'll give a quick summary of each mod, discuss its pros and cons, and then place it into a tier list where it belongs. At the end, you'll see a list of all the mods and their rankings. If you want to use the list to guide you in your creation of any new Warmind Cell builds, feel free to use it. If you want to make your own list using the tier list generator I used in this video, there'll be a link in the description. Obviously, everyone's opinion is going to vary a little bit differently on these Warmind Cell mods, so if you have a different opinion, feel free to voice it below. I'd love to see some other people's views on the Warmind Cell mods. Without further ado, let's get started. First up, we have Global Reach. Global Reach states, Warmind cells you create affect and damage targets at a greater distance. This is your generic mod you're going to always want to run with Warmind cells because it gives them that extra range or effectivity, and it's bait 1 energy, costs no elemental affinity, so definitely put it into the S tier. You could choose to run this mod as your only Warmind cell mod and still get a benefit from it. Next up, we're going to move into the Arc mods. The Arc mods are all about collecting your Warmind cell. So when you create a Warmind cell, your job with these mods is to collect it. So the first mod we have on that is called Blessing of Rasputin. Collecting a Warmind cell increases the chances that your next final blow with a Seraph weapon will create a Warmind cell. Now, this mod really isn't that great in the grand scheme of things because Warmind cells used for collecting aren't great in general. Now, I could see why you would want to use this because you use less, it requires less kills with your weapon. You're getting Warmind cells more often. But the problem with this mod is it's locked into the Arc ecosystem. You're not going to want to use this with any other mods because it requires you to collect the Warmind cell. The only thing I could see you using this with is with the Void mods, which are all about leaving the Warmind cell on the ground, and then maybe right before it leaves you can pick it up. So I'm going to put this into the D tier. It has a few uses. I may move it up to the C tier depending on what we have for the other mods. The next mod is Modular Lightning. Collecting a Warmind cell creates a burst of chaining arc energy around you. Now, for the arc mods that exist in the game, this one really isn't that bad. Yet now you're still required to collect a Warmind cell, which generally isn't that good. It's kind of a waste of your Warmind cell, but it actually has an effect that could be helpful in some situations. So I'll put it into the C tier. Next is Strength of Rasputin. Collecting a Warmind cell grants you melee energy. In most situations, this is just not great. If you're generating Warmind cells, I don't really know why you'd run a Strength build as well. Probably put this into the F tier. It's just kind of irrelevant. There are very, very, very few circumstances where you're going to care about your melee energy and be using Warmind cells. So if you can find a build that makes this work, go ahead, but in most situations it's going to be trash. Next is Sheltering Energy. Collecting a Warmind cell grants you an overshield. I'll put this one into the C category as well. Just like Modular Lightning, it can be used to have some sort of benefits. The overshield is nice. It is a somewhat expensive mod at 5 energy, but it does have a few uses, so we'll put it up into the C tier. That overshield that you gain from it can save you in a lot of situations because you're collecting Warmind cells. You're probably close to enemies. Having that overshield is nice and can save you from a lot of melee enemies and getting absolutely shredded, but at the same time, it's an Arc Warmind cell mod. Next, we have Chosen of the Warmind. Collecting or destroying a Warmind cell creates a concussive blast that pushes enemies away. This mod has some purposes. It's another Arc mod that doesn't really do much. I'll kind of summarize the Arc mods when I'm done, but we're just going to throw this one into D tier. It's worse than an overshield. It doesn't do much, but it's definitely better than getting melee energy back. Last is Warmind's Light, which this mod I already went over in my Charged with Light mod tier list. In the Charged with Light mod tier list, I put this into the F tier. However, if you're using this with an Arc Warmind cell build, it's a little bit better than F tier because the problem with the other Warmind cell mods is they're probably worse than this mod, right? you'd rather use Charged with Light mods over Warmind Cell mods. So if you're going to be collecting Warmind Cell mods, you might as well put use to them and use Charged with Light. So we're actually going to put this all the way up into the C tier for a Warmind Cell mod. So if you're using Warmind Cell mods, this mod is not that bad. If you're using Charged with Light mods, primarily, you don't want to be using this mod. There are other better ways to get Charged with Light. I hope that makes sense. In general, the arc mods are just not good. In most situations, right, based on the weapons offered that can spawn Warmind cells, you're gonna want to play mid-range. You do have the shotguns, the Icolo shotgun and the 7 Seraph CQC, but the sidearm, the submachine gun, the hand cannon, all of those, you're not gonna want to be up close and personal to your enemies. At the same time, Warmind cells are so strong, they can wipe out, with just global reach, they can wipe out hordes of enemies, and they can kill enemies across so many different rooms. So you're not going to want to be collecting your Warmind cell. You're going to be wanting to use the Warmind cell offensively to take out those enemies, rather than collecting it for a small bit of buff or whatever you're using, whichever arc mods you're using. So you'd rather just use global reach than spec into these arc mods, and that's why they're all in the very low categories. Moving on to solar, the first mod we have is Burning Cells. Destroying a Warmind cell creates a burst of solar energy that causes enemies to burn for several seconds. Now, compared to the other solar mods, this mod, it's not that great. Really, that extra solar energy, that extra solar burn doesn't do much. There are a few builds where you can kind of make it work. But in general, it's not going to have a big impact on the damage your Warmind cells do. So, unless you're speccing into a full solar build, I wouldn't really worry too much about this mod. You're going to have better options using some other mods. And now, if you have, like, 4 out of 5 mod slots to use, throw this in. It can't hurt you. But if you can figure out a better mod to put in that slot, in that last mod slot you have available, I would go with something else probably. Next, we have one of the best mods currently in the game, and it's only 1 energy, and that is Wrath of RASPUTIN. Defeating a combatant with the 7 Seraph weapon has a chance to drop a Warmind cell, which you know, but this mod says Solar Splash Damage Final Blows have a chance to create Warmind cells. This is one of the most unique mods in this list, because currently, if you don't have this mod, the only way to generate Warmind cells is with 7 Seraph weapons. When you throw this mod on, it opens up a ton of other options to generate Warmind cells. You have any weapon with Dragonfly on it, any explosive solar weapon like Martyr's Retribution, solar grenades, solar supers, Xenophage. You can generate Warmind cells in so many other ways, and when all those 7 Seraph weapons get sunset, this mod is literally going to be the only way you're going to be able to spawn Warmind cells, so it's going to be a must-have. Back in Season of the Worthy, we had a mod called Tyrant Surge, which could spawn Warmind cells on arc damage, which was great. Made Warmind cells actually somewhat useful without using the 7 Seraph weapons. But now that that mod is gone, we're many seasons past, if you don't want to use a 7 Seraph weapon, you literally have to use this mod, and that's not bad. It's a good mod, right? You can get a ton of value without using a 7 Seraph weapon when you throw this mod on. Definitely an S tier mod. Next, we have FIRETEAM Medic. Destroying a Warmind cell creates a burst of healing for you and your allies. Now, it's okay, right? I'm going to put it into A tier because it's definitely better than Burning Cells. That heal is pretty good. Exploding all enemies around you and then healing, usually it's kind of overkill. The healing isn't necessary, but in some situations, you can heal up from half health. Like, you can spawn a Warmind cell, be shooting some enemies, and then blow that Warmind cell up. And then get that instant heal. So when you're pairing it with an explosive Warmind cell build, definitely recommend this mod if you have the room for it. Definitely not S tier. There are a few better mods, Charged with Light mods that could replace this mod or whatever. But Warmind cell, for one of the Warmind cell mods that are in the game, this is definitely an A tier mod. The next mod is also one of the S tier mods in the game. Rage of the Warmind adds additional solar damage to explosion of Warmind cells you destroy. You know, that may not seem like a lot. It adds about 33% extra damage to your Warmind cells. That is solar. So you may think to yourself, oh, whatever. That's like, it's okay. It's 5 energy. I don't really know why I would need that little extra damage. But when you pair that mod with Wrath of Rasputin, your Warmind cells can create Warmind cells. Usually, it takes 7 rank and file enemies killed to create a Warmind cell, right? If you kill 7 red bars, you make a Warmind cell. 1 Ultra as well creates a Warmind cells, and Majors, I believe, 3 Majors, something like that, right? It's a point system. Now, when you blow up your Warmind cell, now you have to kill another 7 enemies usually after, right? So you blow up your Warmind cell, you clear out the room. Okay, in the next room, now I have to kill 7 enemies before getting my next Warmind cell. When you pair these mods together, you blow up that Warmind cell, and however many enemies it kills, maybe say it kills 5 enemies, you're already 5/7 of the way toward making your next Warmind cell if you combine these 2 mods together. So you get 2 more kills and you have a Warmind cell again. Also, if you kill a full 7 enemies or an Ultra or whatever with this Warmind, with the mod on, with these 2 mods on, you will literally create another Warmind cell. The Warmind cell will create a Warmind cell, and that's just busted. You can pair these mods together, and it is super fun. I highly recommend it. If you have these mods available or Banshee's ever selling them, please get them. It's so fun to use. You don't even need to be running a solar weapon, right? You can just run your Iclos SMG and make Warmind cells that make Warmind cells. Super fun. Pairing it with any sort of solar subclass as well makes it even stronger. So I highly recommend this mod. Definitely S tier. Next mod is a mod I've actually never used. It's called Light of the Fire. Rapidly defeating targets with the detonation of a Warmind cell generates an orb of power. I just don't really see how this mod could ever be useful. Like, sure, orbs of light, really, unless it's your super, they don't really do much. The only benefit of an orb of light right now is using taking charge. But when you have this mod that's right next to it, which I'll get to in a second, that defeats the whole purpose. So you might as well just, like, throw on any sort of taking charge or whatever. You're not gonna really need those orbs of light from your Warmind cells. There are so many better ways of generating orbs of light. This mod is pretty useless. Now, it's really the only exception on the solar list that I'm gonna move all the way down to D tier. All the other solar mods are pretty good, but this mod is just basically useless. Yeah, it's not F tier, but it's almost nearly useless. The final solar mod is Incinerating Light, one of the mods I already went over in my Charged with Light tier list. Become charged with light by rapidly defeating multiple enemies with the explosion of a Warmind cell. If you're speccing into a solar Warmind build, say you have Global Reach, Wrath of Rasputin, and Rage of the Warmind, you could throw this mod on, Incinerating Light on, and then throw maybe Protective Light or some sort of Charged with Light mod on as well, and now you've made a hybrid build. But generally speaking, it's not the best mod in the game. There are other probably better ways of getting charged with light. Definitely better than collecting a Warmind cell. But at the end of the day, it's still not the best mod, because whenever you go between a hybrid Warmind cell and charged with light build, you're losing some sort of a little bit of value. So I would rather go with FIRETEAM Medic than this mod. So we'll put it into the B tier. That concludes our solar mods. As you can see, solar mods are so much better than arc mods, with the one exception of Light of the Fire. If you're making a Warmind cell build, I highly recommend having most of your armor on solar so you can spec these mods in, because they're just so much better than the arc mods. I haven't ever switched off these solar mods since I started using them. I've used arc mods maybe once, and that was back in Season of the Worthy when we had Tyrant Surge and we could make Warmind cells with literally any sort of arc ability. That was really strong, just damaging. Warmind cells were really abundant. The arc mods became somewhat relevant, but with the current meta and requiring 7th Seraph weapons or explosive damage to generate Warmind cells, explosive damage is gonna be the best use of them, and that is going to be the solar mods. Now, the void mods are also not that bad, right? They're not the S tier category as the solar mods. They require a lot more setup and team coordination to use, which is not bad. I don't mind that. They're just not quite as strong individually, but when used properly, they can have a significant impact on the game you're playing. So the first mod we have is Cellular Suppression. Damaging a Warmind cell creates a burst of suppressing void energy. Additionally, you deal less damage to Warmind cells. So you shoot your Warmind cell and it suppresses all the enemies around you. The reason you deal less damage to Warmind cells is so you don't accidentally blow your Warmind cells up when you're shooting them. Shoot them with your primary weapon or whatever, and it suppresses all enemies around you. This is a very strong mod. You're not going to want to pair this with any sort of like Rage of the Warmind, Wrath of Rasputin, because the whole point of this mod is to leave it on the ground, initially suppress some enemies, and then like let it despawn or whatever. You can blow it up as it's about to explode, but it's generally just kind of leave the Warmind cell on the ground and forget about it. Next mod is also probably an A tier mod, Power of Rasputin. You gain a bonus to weapon damage, against enemies that are near Warmind cells. So no sort of ability damage, it only buffs your weapons. But this mod is a 10% damage buff. So Well of Radiance is like a 25% damage buff, and Bubble is a 33%. This is a 10%. But the good thing is, this mod stacks with both debuffs and buffs. Generally speaking, in the game, buffs and debuffs don't stack together, right? Your damage buffs, like Well of Radiance, Bubble, they don't stack. Whatever you have the highest, whatever is your highest damage buff is what you'll use. So if you have a Well and a Bubble, your Bubble will override the Well. For debuffs, all debuffs in the game are 30%, so it doesn't really matter. But this extra 10% damage is great. If you're trying to one-phase a boss or get that, speedrun strat down, that extra 10% of damage could make a difference. You do have to pair this with one other mod, which is Grasp of the Warmind, which I'll get there in a second, in most situations against bosses. So unless you're using this mod against a boss, it's really not that good. But against boss fights, which are generally the more challenging parts in raids, and generally the more challenging parts of Destiny, it's a good mod. It'll definitely be A tier. Warmind's Protection is probably the only Void mod I'll throw into the S tier. This mod is so good because it can be combined with all of the different categories of Warmind cells. You can use this with Arc mods, you can use this with Solar mods, and you can use this with Void mods. You take reduced damage from enemies near Warmind cells. It's a 50% damage reduction, the same as Protective Light when you make a Warmind cell. So if you're using Solar mods, you can throw this one on too. You can make a Warmind cell and then blow it up. But for that couple seconds it's on the ground before you shoot it, the enemies around you are basically not going to hurt you. So that's pretty strong. You can also use this with the Void mods and start taking reduced enemy damage from enemies when you just leave your Warmind cell there. That's what it's meant to be used for. But then again, it can be used for anything. You can also use it with those Arc mods, right? You make these Warmind cells, when you're on your way to go collect it, when you're running toward that Warmind cell, you take reduced damage. So definitely an S tier mod just because of its flexibility and its only 2 energy cost. Right now, defensive combat style mods are the best combat style mods because of the meta of the game. Any sort of defensive capability is pretty much S tier. That's why Protective Light is S tier, and that's why this is S tier. Next on our list is Warmind's Longevity. This is an interesting mod because of what it says. Warmind cells you create last longer, right? So you'd think this mod would be great with Power of Rasputin and Warmind's Protection, and you wouldn't be wrong. This mod is great with those suppressing and leaving on the ground mods, but its primary purpose you'd think would be with Power of Rasputin, right? So you can get that 10% damage increase for longer periods of time. However, if you use Grasp of the Warmind and you throw a Warmind cell at an enemy, this mod actually for some reason doesn't do anything. So its one purpose, which would be during damage fights, or it's at least its strongest use, doesn't really do much. So we're gonna throw this into the B tier, because the one time you think you'd want to use it, you don't really want to use it. So unless you're using a full-on Void build, there's no real reason to use this mod, so we'll put it into the B tier. Similarly, with Light from Darkness, becoming charged with light by defeating multiple enemies near a Warmind cell using weapons or abilities. If you're speccing into a Void builds, this is okay. Similarly, though, to the Solar mod for getting charged with light, the hybrid mods aren't generally the best, so B tier is where this mod will sit. You can definitely use it. If you're leaving your Warmind cells on the ground, being able to get charged with light often is good, But then again, if you're speccing into a Charged with Light build, you can only use 3 Warmind Cell mods. One of those is probably taken up by Global Reach, which means you only have 2 options left. So it drastically limits your options in terms of Warmind Cells. And generally, the more Warmind Cell mods you can stack on top of each other, it kind of increases exponentially. So taking, you know, those last two Warmind Cell mods out really hurts your build sometimes. Not all the time, that's why this is B tier, but a fair amount of time. Last but not least, we have Grasp of the Warmind. We'll throw this into A tier along with Power of Rasputin. Those 2 mods kind of go hand in hand. You want to use them together. If you're using Power of Rasputin, being able to chuck that Warmind Cell for that extra 10% damage boost is pretty strong. Basically, this mod says you can pick up and carry and throw Warmind Cells. Once thrown again, a Warmind Cell cannot be picked up again, logically. So you want to pick it up, throw it at your boss. It will stick to the boss. It will start glowing if you have the mod on. And yeah, as long as your team is running Power of Rasputin, that's something I forgot to mention, right? You don't need to be the one to generate the Warmind Cell. As long as there is a Warmind Cell, most of these mods are going to work, right? Warmind's Protection will work on all Warmind Cells. Warmind Suppression will work on all Warmind Cells. So it doesn't need to just be your Warmind Cell that you create to get these status effects. That's why these Void mods are also up in kind of in this A tier, S tier, B tier categories. That's it for the Void mods. Generally, all about leaving the Warmind Cells on the ground, debuffing enemies, buffing enemies. They're up there with the Solar Warmind Cells, but these mods are a little bit more team oriented, so you're not really going to want to run them in solo play as much. Warmind Cells with the solar mods are definitely your solar play. Solar mods are definitely your solo play mods. Warmind Cell mods definitely. The solar mods definitely better for solo play, but these Void mods are very, very strong contenders, possibly better than solar mods in these team raid environments, underleveled content, raids, whatever it is. You can get a decent amount of value if you know what you're doing and you spec into the right mods and you're coordinated enough with your team. That's going to do it for the tier list. If you like this video, make sure to check out my Charged with Light tier list. There will be a link in the description. It may also pop up in your recommended. I pretty much do the same thing with all the Charged with Light mods, kind of discuss which mods are S tier, which mods you should really, really stay away with. There are a fair amount more of Charged with Light mods right now, so it's definitely interesting to see how those line up. I hope to be making a video in the future of when you should be using Warmind Cell mods versus when you should be using Charged with Light. I'll kind of talk about the stuff I talked about in this video, where maybe Charged with Light mods are better in this situation, Warmind Cell mods are better in this situation. So if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe. I should have that out sometime within the next week. Aside from that, if you liked this video and you liked, you know, this tier list, you can also check out the link in the description to make your own tier list. Share it around with your friends, get some feedback, discuss it in the comments, whatever you want to do. Maybe you found this tier list helpful and you like the mods I suggest. If you do, make sure to let me know. My goal with these videos is to inform everyone of how good these different Warmind Cell mods are and kind of give my own opinion on what mods are kind of useless and what mods are must-haves. S tier category mods, like these 4 mods up here, are definitely must-haves if you're using a Warmind Cell build. Maybe you didn't have those in there before, maybe you want to work them into your build now, but that's about it for now. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.